Menthol cigarettes have a significant impact on the health of African Americans, contributing to heart attacks, lung cancer, strokes, and other diseases. Joining us right now to talk about this, bring my guests up, please. Folks, this is a really important story. Anybody knows I can't stand smoking. So again, want to bring up the guest right now. Give me 1 second here. Mignonne Guy, Chair of the Department of African American Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University out of Richmond, Virginia. Let's really break this thing down. People don't understand. There's a direct intersection of black-owned media and menthol cigarettes. Explain.
Well, Black-owned media and a multitude of other organizations as well. Unfortunately, the tobacco industry has done a great job in infiltrating Black communities in multitude of fashion. They've infiltrated by early on in the days. They would advertise with ebony and jet and use ads of Black images and try to portray a certain type of Black culture that they wanted to sell to the public, and it happened to work. Marketing works, right? And they brought this into our communities by infiltrating our media, by infiltrating our churches, our political organizations, such as Congressional Black Caucus, you name it. They've done very well at spending their multi-billions of dollars trying to get into our community.
But we have to add this. And the reason that happened is because all of the other advertisers would not advertise in Black media. So as a result, if you were Ebony, if you were Jet, if you were Black newspapers, if you were Black-owned radio, all these other companies would not advertise in Black-owned media. And I dare say, and I know people may think this is crazy, without this advertising, a lot of Black-owned media would have died. And that was the dilemma that Black-owned media was in. And that is, damn, cigarettes, because you couldn't, because at that time, you couldn't do alcohol. So it's kind of like, look, they were coming there, and I remember full-page ads in Ebony.
That's right.
Full-page ads in Jet, when other folks, car companies and other brands would not touch Black-owned media.
That's right. That's right. They exploited, they were very good at exploiting vulnerabilities in the Black community, right? So if certain organizations didn't have funding or didn't have support, then in comes the industry and to save the day, right? But the whole time, they're actually peddling a poison to our communities. And I have such a push-pull sort of feeling about this because, they've also done this with HBCUs. They've funded HBCUs and given them money and support because they don't get enough money from Congress, or they don't give enough money from the federal government in order to survive and in order to serve our students the way that we need them to. So in comes the tobacco industry to come save the day, but it's at too great of a cost. It's at a cost of 45,000 lives every year.
And not only this, who remembers this right here? That you see right here. Now,
right.
Again, I need everybody to understand, when you hear the phrase cool jazz festival, you're thinking, oh shit, this cool. No. This is what they were advertising, the cool filters.
Right.
When you Newport, same thing. You think Newport Jazz Festival, you think no. Newports. Not only that, when you go back to, again, go to the 70s, the Virginia Slims tennis tour. That wasn't named after a slim woman named Virginia.
No, it sure wasn't. It was named after the product.
But the last one. So and again, I was talking African Americans, but you also had. Why is it escaping me right now? For the Winston Cup in NASCAR.
Yeah.
What no man named Winston, that was a cigarette brand. So the cigarette companies, they were massive spenders of advertising, and that didn't really end until you had those state lawsuits where they began to lose those, and part of the agreement in those lawsuits, they had to stop advertising.
That's right. That's right. And it's funny you mentioned that, because not only did they infiltrate Black communities by media, right? I live in Richmond, Virginia right now. I'm a new transplant to the Confederacy, as I call it. I live in Richmond, Virginia. It's predominantly Black area, and you walk onto our campus, and what do you see is the Altria Theater, which is owned by Philip Morris, right? So they have their way of going into these communities in multiple ways. And I've done other shows recently, and folks would call in and they would talk about how the only people that could get the only decent jobs that Black folks could get in some of the tobacco regions was with the tobacco industry. And so they would give them well-paying jobs, and they would give them security where they couldn't get jobs in other places. And what happened? They gave them free cigarettes to take home and to give to their families and to give to their friends. So they had media, and they still have media. They just do digital media now, right? Because they can't do the billboards anymore. So they had the media cornered. They came into the communities by giving churches funding, and they would support certain types of gatherings and things of that nature. Those festivals that you referred to, which was perfect, married it with music, so it seemed okay, and it seemed like it was part of the culture. And then they gave them jobs, and they still do it today. They still try to recruit Black scientists to come over to the industry to try to work for them as well.
Again, it's just one of those things people really don't understand how deep this went.
It's deep.
And then when you talk about those events, it was literally buying tables at every Black event, Black conferences. It was extremely deep in the Black community. Questions from my panel. Candace, you first.
So we've been talking about this push and pull. As you said, they provided money to media companies and they provide jobs. But I've been reading about this push and pull too, in terms of Black clergy and store owners saying, hey, listen, you can't just get rid of these menthol cigarettes, because people are going to find other ways around it, and you're going to be taking away business from us. So I'm wondering, what's your response to that for people saying this is going to hurt us economically? We have to do something else, because prohibition is never going to work. Didn't work with alcohol, didn't work with abortion, hasn't worked with a lot of stuff.
So before she answers that, I'm gonna tell you something. So, and again, people need to understand how they buy off people. And let me be perfectly clear: the ads that you see running for this campaign, we're being paid to run those ads. I got no problem saying that. But I despise cigarettes. I'm allergic to smoke. So I would say ban all that shit. I'm perfectly fine with it. But here's what I need people to understand. It was a few years ago. So you got two Black chambers. You have the Black Chamber of Commerce that Harry Alford runs, okay? And they always paying them to do stuff. I'm being straight up. Then you got U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. So a few years ago, when this issue came up, all of a sudden we see these news releases, and Alford's group was saying, oh no, we can't support this because this is gonna hurt the Black-owned convenience stores. That was what they were using. I got an email last year from a Black political operative who you see on television on one of the networks trying to stop the FDA ban on menthols. And they pulled in some prominent Black pastors and Black lawyers. So they were trying to book them on my show. And I was like, hell no, that shit ain't happening. And then, of course, Politico later did a story on the Black civil rights and folks and lawyers who were being paid off. They were trying to use that very argument, Candace, oh, this is going to hurt the Black convenience stores, until you start trying to add up how many Black convenience stores do you actually have that are being impacted. They're like, oh, it's going to hurt the Black-owned bodegas in New York.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
So they've tried to use, the economic. Oh, you're gonna hurt black people when? Hold up. How many people die per year?
45,000 lives per year. Yes.
That's black lives or total lives?
45,000 black lives.
So 45,000 black lives, and we ain't talking the untold millions we got to spend on healthcare as a result of this. And menthol cigarettes are a lot different than other cigarettes, correct?
Yeah. Yes, they're absolutely different. So menthol cigarettes actually are more addictive. Menthol cigarette smokers tend to have more nicotinic receptors in their brains, right? And so it makes it more difficult for them to quit. The smoking topography is different. How you inhale the products are different because they have the coolants and they have the sugars in them that makes the poison go down more smoothly. That's why, and the reason why they have these coolants in there, excuse me, one of the appeals of the menthol cigarettes are the coolants, which make them more appealing to young people, to young kids. We have black kids who are age 12, between 12 and 18, that use these products. And we also have white children that start using these products earlier because it makes the poison go down more smoothly. Not only do they increase the nicotinic receptors, they make them more addictive, they make them more difficult to quit smoking. That's why we have such low rates of quitting amongst black people. And I will get back to that, the store owner thing. We don't have, when we go to these neighborhoods, let's look at who owns the stores in the neighborhoods. They're usually not black people, quite frankly. We don't own the things that we need to be owning in our own communities. We often see other groups and other populations that own these products. So the economic impact on the stores compared to the devastating economic impact on the lives that we're losing, it's a no-brainer. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about potentially 37% of the 37% of the cigarette market is menthol cigarettes. 85% of the people who smoke menthols are black people. Those are the
And 94% of black youth who smoke menthol.
Boom. Exactly. It's those arguments that we hear, the arguments about store ownership, about the economic impact, which doesn't match the cost associated with healthcare that we have, right? The arguments that we hear about, they're the same people that Roland Martin is speaking about. Those, I guess I can't say their names on TV, but these political leaders, these high-profile leaders, will say things like, "Well, black people deserve they have the right to choose what they want to smoke and what they want to do." They're not accounting for those 90% of the youth that Roland referred to. They're not accounting for the exposure to youth that buy secondhand smoke, because black populations unfortunately have the lowest rates of in-home smoking bans. So when we have children that are exposed to these products, they also have nicotinic receptors that are producing in their brains, and so they're more likely to smoke. And let's not miss the fact that what do we have in terms of mortality for children, black children in particular? It's asthma, right? We have asthma issues. Those kids are exposed to this smoke, and therefore they have higher rates of hospitalization and death associated with their exacerbated asthma that is complicated by this menthol cigarette smoking.
I remember when we first started this show, again, I need everybody watching to understand, when we first started Roland Martin Unfiltered, we had one advertiser, the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, thanks to my frat brother Lee Saunders. Do you know who all of a sudden wanted to advertise with us? Jewel.
Ooh.
Not Jewel Osco Grocers, not a jewelry store. Jewel. They had the flavored vapes, correct?
That's right.
They have flavored.
So they came to us and was trying to throw some serious money, and my response was, "Y'all can kiss my ass."
Thank you. Because you know what? Other people did not. There are, who will remain nameless. There is at least one HBCU that took $7.5 million of money from Juul in order to study Juul in black populations before black people were actually using that product. Do you think that they were doing that for the good of the community?
Wow. Larry, your question.
Yeah, so we essentially have, based on this conversation in all the research, this intersection of public health and capitalism, right? So
Racial capitalism,
racial
right?
capitalism. Yeah, let's be clear about that. So,
Mhm.
and on top of that, it's during a time of anti-blackness. So all these black people are dying. We're talking about how much money it costs, obviously healthcare, and also the counters, as Roland talked about, in terms of what it costs black entrepreneurs. And so I was curious in terms of what you think the argument is, considering racial capitalism, public health, and anti-blackness. What is the argument you make to policymakers about why this is an important issue?
The fact that menthol is in our neighborhoods. Let's make it very clear. The tobacco industry, as I'm a chair of Black Studies, right? The tobacco industry was studying Black communities. Thank you for showing this. The tobacco industry was studying Black communities before my discipline even existed. They were looking at the woes and the lack of civil rights and all of the oppression that was happening in these communities. They used redlining, these racist tactics, in order these vestiges of racist tactics that actually continue into the present with residential segregation. They used these racist maps that the federal government gave them in order to target Black communities and sell these products. And somehow it's now been contorted and distorted to think that somehow menthol is naturally part of the Black community. No, this was a concerted effort, right? So my argument to these individuals is that this is to take this out of our communities. This is reparations. Because what they've done is they created the roadmap for these products to go into our neighborhoods. They refused in the Family Smoking Prevention Act, Tobacco Control Act of 2009. They refused to ban menthol. They banned every other flavored cigarette, like cherry and all kinds of other cloves and things like that, things that people didn't even use. They refused to. They banned all of these because these are what white kids might use, and they kept menthol on the market, which was 85% of the Black population that was using them. So my argument is this is reparations. My argument is this is a chance to clean up this poison and this drug that you have permitted this industry to infiltrate into our communities.
So before I go to Joe's question, this is a political story from last year. And again, here was the new argument they tried last year, okay? They tried last year to say, that this is going to lead to over-policing of Black communities. And so this was April 28th, 2022. So concerns about over-policing threaten to stall a ban on menthol cigarettes and undermine the major tobacco regulation a decade in the making. And so you literally had CBC members. You had, the article says here, Reverend Al Sharpton, civil rights attorney Ben Crump, and relatives of George Floyd have argued that the rules should take effect would give law enforcement another reason to target Black people. You literally had this. This was in their story. Then this story says members of the Congressional Black Caucus are divided, but an aide to the group said that the push from civil rights leaders over recent weeks has caused members to give greater thought to what could be potential unintended consequences. And so Donald McKeechin, who has passed away, he was quoted here as well. And so again, what you had here was different arguments being targeted. The goal was not to deal with over-policing. The goal was not to deal with anything else. The goal was to keep Black people buying menthol cigarettes. Joe.
There is so much to know and to learn about this. I like to think I'm somebody that pays attention to the issue, but this has been very educational for me. So tell me how, because we have to do so much, when there's the job argument, you've got to have the counter to that. Where are our jobs going to come from? When there's the over-policing arguments, we've got to have our counters to that. There's so many. This is a multi-front war. How do you feel that it's going in terms of educating people? Do you feel like we're making progress, or do you feel like you're beating your head against the wall?
Depends on the day. I think that having platforms such as this is really important. It's critically important. Being able to, most of the arguments that have been presented today, and the ones that were in the news, such as the hyper-policing and over-policing in Black and brown communities, which is another topic, and I do want to make sure that I acknowledge the fact that police brutality and hyper-policing and over-policing is an issue. If I could have a moment just to clear it up to your audience, because I really want to address this. This ban is potentially the potential ban, because I'm not even sure that they'll even do right by us and actually do what they should and ban it. The ban is at the manufacturer's level. It is at the manufacturer, the wholesaler, the distributor, and the retailer. It is not at the individual unit of analysis. It is not for a Black person that if they happen to get a menthol cigarette somehow that is smoking it, that has no effect on them, right? So the argument of policing is a little bit problematic simply because of the fact that the ban is at the industry and those who are selling it, not at the people who may get their hands on it, right? That's the first thing that I wanted to say. The second thing is that I'm concerned about the thought that we can't do both. How come, we want to talk about save Black lives against police brutality, but we don't want to save Black lungs when it comes to cigarettes and cancer and every other disease, actually, because cigarettes actually affect every organ in the body. And we know that Black people have more comorbidities than anyone else, right? So we can't save both lives in both cases. You know what I'm saying? Does it have to be an and or? Can't it be a both and? Can we actually deal with corrupt policing and racist police officers that do exist? And can we also save the lives of children and adults that use these products, that are addicted to these products, that we don't even have good evidence-based practices to help them quit? Right? So it's not like people always want to say to me, well, Mignonne, if people want to quit smoking menthol cigarettes, they'll just quit. No, menthol cigarettes are much harder to quit.
Right.
That's another reason why we have to ban this product. It should not be on the market because we don't even have decent evidence-based practices in order to help people quit appropriately.
I'm going to read this and I'm going to get a final comment because this was a political story, y'all, last year. And Mignonne addressed it earlier. A 2021 study found that although Black Americans make up 12% of the population, 13%, they incurred 41% of all deaths and 50% of the years of life lost due to menthol cigarettes between 1980 and 2018. Well, let me say that again. We make up 12 to 13% of the population. But of the people who die to menthol cigarettes, we make up 41% of the deaths and 50% of the years of life lost. Years of life lost means income lost, family time lost. That has a direct impact on our ability to create wealth. That actually makes it even more economically difficult on our families because we're dying younger. And while we are then dying because of that, we're incurring higher medical costs, putting our folks in more economic danger as well. So
that's right.
Folks need to understand that. Candace asked the point earlier, in her question, and isn't it correct? Because again, for the people who say, because I think she asked, people are going to say, oh, they can always get this here. There was a dramatic decrease when those lawsuits were successful when it came to folks smoking. And the reality is the tobacco industry, the reason they went to the vapes and the flavored stuff, because people actually stopped smoking when the bans went into effect, correct?
That's right. And we also see in Canada has already banned menthol cigarettes. Other countries have banned menthol cigarettes. We are holding on to it because we have menthol cigarettes are 37% of the market, 85% of the Black people who smoke menthol. We're throwaways in this country.
Boom.
Right? we're throwaways in this country. They left us on the table in 2009, and if we give them the opportunity, they'll leave us on the table again, right? And yes, people will quit. When you talk to smokers, I study tobacco. When you speak, and I'm a former smoker, so I can even speak from that viewpoint, that vantage point. When you
Ooh,
speak to
Lord,
smokers,
thank God you a former smoker, because we couldn't get along if you were smoking. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, but hey, come on, it's a folly of youth. So, but when you speak to smokers, the vast majority of people who smoke want to quit. They want to quit, right? So we're not talking about imposing something on them that they don't already want. The vast majority want to quit. It's very difficult. It's very hard. It's harder to quit smoking cigarettes than it is to quit heroin. This is a fact. So when we're talking about this, we really need to understand that what we do with this potential ban, because I'm not convinced it's going to happen. I'm not speaking. I do work on the FDA's Tobacco Scientific Advisory Board. So I'm telling you in advance, I'm not speaking on behalf of the FDA. I'm speaking on behalf of Mignonne Guy, a Black woman who lives in America. And I have very rarely seen the federal government do right by Black people, which is why I call this reparations, because this is a time for them to get it right. And one more thing I want to say to you before we wrap up. One thing that we have to be really cognizant of is there's so much counter market, there's so much misinformation and disinformation that the industry is putting out right now. And a lot of the arguments that we're talking about are exactly those arguments. When you get on the FDA calls to listen to comments, you hear people that it's on the phone, so you can't see what they look like, but you hear them say, well, I'm a Black police officer in this neighborhood, or I'm a white police officer in this neighborhood, and I'm worried that if we ban menthol, then we'll have more policing in Black neighborhoods. When have you ever heard a police officer say that they are worried about hyper-policing, police brutality, and over-policing in Black neighborhoods? These people are being paid. These people are being paid. And the industry it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. They have a lot of money to pay these people.
Yep.
Right? We already know that they paid Black people in California to vote against, to go protest against the ban that they, thank God, got through in California.
Yep.
But there was already an ad out that showed that they were getting paid $80 an hour for 2.5 hours of work to get Black people to come out with T-shirts, almost looking like the ones that were like, Blacks vote for Trump, right? To vote against the ban on menthol. So they're taking our own people to vote against our own interests to save our own Black lungs and to save our own Black lives.
Yep.
We cannot allow this to happen. We absolutely cannot allow this to happen.
And again, I just need people to understand, they wanted to pay me a lot of money to advertise Juul on this show. And I said no. And so to our audience, when I'm talking about when we're fighting these advertising battles, when I'm talking about when I'm asking you to contribute and give, do understand why. It's because there are folks who want to come to us, and yes, these tobacco companies, and for me, on principle, it's an absolute no, period. But guess what? If we don't have this show, we can't counter the messaging. And so you have to understand, and that was the trick that they used against Black-owned media in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. And I'm talking about they had 26 and 52-week ad buys for newspapers, which is unheard of, and they had 12-month ad buys in magazines when no other major advertisers were willing to give them kind of money. So just understand what Professor Guy is laying out. It was a clear play on Jim Crow racist policies, filling the void, knowing full well we needed the money. But what it also did was it gave them an inroad into our lungs and our households, and we are paying the price. Professor Guy, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for keeping the good fight.
Thanks a bunch. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
For decades, the tobacco industry has deliberately targeted Black communities and kids with marketing for menthol cigarettes. It's had a devastating impact on Black health. Tobacco use claims 45,000 Black lives every year. It's the #1 cause of preventable death. In the 1950s, less than 10% of Black smokers used menthol cigarettes. Today, it's 85%. Ban menthol cigarettes. Save lives.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.